Today, every day, small cap investors visit Agoracom knowing this is the day to discover the world's next great company, to have their dreams come true. That's why I take to the open road, to find them, to tell their stories, to engage them, to bring them to life, because they want to connect with you from your office, your phone, your home, anywhere. Agoracom, find your dream.
Welcome to CEO Interviews, a production of Agoracom in which we take the time to sit down with small cap executives about what's going on at their companies. Small program note, we're happy that all of you take your time to watch these videos, but we also know it's not easy to watch. So all of these interviews now are available on podcast, on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. So if you can't watch, listen in your car while you're stuck in traffic, while you got some downtime, but never miss them because great interviews like this with Paul Gill, CEO over at Lomiko Metals, trades on the venture exchange on the stock symbol LMR. You don't want to miss stuff like this. For those of you who are new to the story, we're going to go over it quickly because we're going to do a great year review of what's happened in 2019 and what to look forward to in 2020. But in summary, the company's got the La Lutra Flake Graphite property. It's a high-grade deposit that's located about 120 kilometers northwest of Montreal. Great indicated and inferred resource numbers. I'll let Paul tell you all about that. But they're ideally positioned both geographically and as far as their resource goes in order to be able to serve the number of mega factories that are coming into in various stages of development throughout North America and even the world. And then you've got Quebec and the BC government, their commitment to green energy, zero emissions by 2030. That should create a floor for future demand. So the future looks bright for Lomiko. Paul, welcome back.
Thanks, George. Thanks for having me on.
It's always great to have you on right before Christmas. So, hopefully we'll talk about what kind of gifts you got under the tree for everybody for that they can enjoy in 2020. Let's talk about La Lutra first, obviously, because that's the flagship. Really quickly, for people who are watching or listening for the first time, just tell us how big it is and why that graphite, the quality of the graphite there is going to be able to service the market.
Yeah, La Lutra is a project we've been working on since 2015, and we've been drilling away and drilled up to 170 holes. The last program of 21 holes just finished in 2019. It's a total of 2,800 hectares located about 100 kilometers north west of Montreal and very close to the Imerys carbon and graphite mine, which is located 53 kilometers to the northwest as well in Lac des Îles. So we've been working there. We've had numerous great drill holes. In fact, the last few drill holes we've experienced intersects of over 100 meters and many different graphite grades in the teens and in the high single digits. Yeah. So you're looking at developing a graphite deposit that is at least 10% graphite. That's what your target is, and at least 10 million tons. And the mine that's up the road from us was about 5 million tons of 7.7%. So we're hoping to get there, and we've had one resource calculation already. We're going to have a updated one fairly shortly. So it's exciting times for La Lutra and the graphite market in general.
Let's talk about that since you mentioned it. You've told the market that you want to put an update 43-101 and then even a preliminary economic assessment. What are the timelines generally looking for that?
Yeah, at this point in time, the 43-101 is yet to be commissioned. We're hoping to do that very shortly with new financing that we're going to put in to the company in the next little bit here. So what that will do is really go through the entire project and look at all of the drill holes that have been done, define open pits around those particular drill holes so that you can have defined deposit areas. And that's going to be fantastic for our future, because once you have that defined, then you can compare apples to apples to other companies. We have a great group of companies in Quebec, Mason Graphite, Nouveau Monde. They're all at a very advanced stage. We hope to join them and be able to compare to them. And we're certainly 1/10 of the market cap, trading at a very small valuation compared to those other two. So it's going to be hopefully a great year in 2020 when we start that process.
And you've got a general sense for the size now. Do you have a general sense for where, what it might be on the new 43101? Just generally speaking, are you even allowed to talk about how much bigger you think it'll grow?
Yeah, I think that the downside target is 10% and 10 million tons, and then the upside target is maybe up to 25 million tons, and that's going to be a very valuable deposit if we get up to that level, because that means that the kind of material you have going in over the course of 25 years or 10 years or whatever amount of timeline, you're basically being able to produce $50 to $70 million worth of profit per year. So that's what you want to accomplish in one of these mines. And if you can pull those numbers out and prove it in a feasibility study, you're going to get noticed, and you're going to be top 5 in the world. Right now, we've had an interesting year in the graphite market, because we thought by now that we'd see a lot of demand hit.
True.
And what we have seen, though, is certainly the volumes have picked up in the amount of graphite that has been produced in the world, but a lot of it has been sucked up by by China, and that's interesting enough, because a lot of those mega factories that are being built are in China, but the supply is coming from Mozambique. A company called Syrah Resources has been sending a lot of material out there,
and they're kind of flooding the market too, right?
Yeah, they flooded the market
with their own. They just had their own bills to pay at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, they just commissioned in early or late 2018. They had to pay bills. They were only started getting revenue. They were selling, I think, at fire sale prices, and that drove the market down. So once you have a very small market in graphite, it's not the copper market. It's very much a volatile market that gets affected by supply and demand. And so you have a group that's ready to sell at fire sale prices. Well, all of a sudden, graphite demand goes down, investor interest goes down in those particular commodities.
Now, you're talking about how graphite's, you're saying it's a smaller market right now. Let's talk about that and how you think that's going to change in the next 1, 2, 3 years with even these mega factories in the United States that are either up and running or in process, and how that dovetails with your timing to hopefully bring La Luz into production.
Yeah, if we step back and take a look at what technology trends have been in the last 30 years, let's look at 1980 to 1990. That was a decade of the computer, and the computer came on and became generally used by 1990. 1990 to 2000 was the decade of the internet, and internet came on, and really everyone started using it more and more. And the same thing with the smartphones. 2000 to 2010, everyone started using smartphones. 2010 to 2020 was really social media. So we're calling 2020 to 2030 the decade of the electric vehicle revolution, because from the numbers of sales and the speed at which the acceleration of sales is progressing, we're going to see a lot of cars on the road. And what's that mean? And what have we seen in the way of information to back that up? Well, you don't have to look far. You look at the Teslas, you see them more and more. But look at the new developments. We've got Ford coming out with the Mustang Mach-E. That's going to be affecting the market. We've got Tesla coming out with a Cybertruck, GM coming out with electric vehicle, and a number of others that are out there, the Rivian, and of course the Prius has been out for a while and certainly getting more and more used. So we're seeing a huge market developing there, and therefore we have a lot of different lithium-ion factories that are being built in North America to support that system. And so that means that those are going to need supply of materials, battery materials specifically, and we're there, I think, in the right time to get up and running by the time they need those materials.
Yeah, and don't forget, you got Ferrari, you got Porsche, you got everybody producing an EV now, right? For their line. So there's no doubt. There's little doubt, right? It's electric vehicle demand is going to explode.
Yeah.
Supply is going to explode. Demand is going to explode, and that means batteries. That means graphite. But I'm going to ask you a devil's advocate question here. So people don't think we're just softballing this. And can you be competitive, right? And what does it mean that you're in Quebec and you can access the entire eastern seaboard of the United States? You're right off the St. Lawrence. You could. What does it mean? Can you be competitive from Quebec in that market as it starts to really take off in the next 2, 3, 4 years?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think the reality is that we have to compete worldwide against every producer, not just in Canada. So we've got to be able to provide a good business plan so that we are able to compete with graphite coming out of Mozambique and Sri Lanka. And the advantage we have is the fact that we're near to a lot of the production facilities that'll be built for these particular vehicles. So we're closer to Europe, we're closer to Detroit and to Nevada, where all these lithium-ion megafactories are being built. In fact, we think there's going to be a lithium-ion megafactory built in Quebec. It seems like a logical choice. So
really
we're
does.
getting ready for that. We've just had news from our nearest neighbor and multinational company, Imerys Carbon Graphite, that they're starting to get into the electric vehicle battery materials for graphite. So that's great news. Obviously, their mine is running out, so they're going to need more material. So we're very excited about that kind of news coming out and affecting the market. But I think the general trend is your friend, and the general trend is there's more vehicles on the road. Means every one of those Teslas or whatever type of vehicle that has a lithium-ion battery has over 50 kilograms or 40 kilograms of graphite in it. And that's amazing because way
more than lithium, and a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah, it weighs more than lithium, and it's also by volume quite extensive in the cars. And so the more vehicles on the road, the more we will need this material. And let's supply it from North America. Let's not get it from Africa. Let's create jobs here.
And just the last point of that, I'm just kind of thinking out loud, but I would imagine another advantage you have is sustainability, because you're a Canadian company, you're a listed issuer. That means you've got transparency, you got reporting requirements, and that you're going out of your way to make sure that when La Luta does come into play, that it's going to be done in a way that's really environmentally friendly, not just in the end product, because obviously you want to get electric vehicles out there because that's a great environmental solution, but even in the way you're going to produce it, the way you're going to maintain the land. I've got to think, but correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm asking this for everyone at home, is that a big advantage too over suppliers coming out of third world countries?
Yeah, it has to be. I mean, we've seen the horror stories of cobalt supply coming out of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and kids being used to get that material out of the ground, and it's horrible. And so we don't want to be involved in that. We don't want to be involved in polluting any location. So we think that Canada has the opportunity to step up and become a sustainable producer of this particular material, and suppliers will respond to that. If we can produce a material that's just as good as anywhere else, and we can do it sustainably and ethically, I think we're going to get become part of that supply chain in North America, and that's the goal here, is to plug in and be part of providing spherical graphite materials, which is a higher end product than just what the normal material is. And then also right up to graphite anodes. That's another potential that would be really exciting, because that again is another value add. And
you're not just shipping off raw graphite. Here you go.
Exactly.
You're going up the value chain by making very, very specific high-end, high-value products that the industry needs, or at least that's the plan. You're not making them now. I want to be clear for everyone at home.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that takes intensive amount of capital. It takes a very special project, and I think that we've got that project. So once you have the raw material, the raw product tested, and that's still coming up, that's what we have to do to remove the risk, is get the metallurgical testing done, get the environmental testing done, so that we're not producing a bunch of cyanide or sulfur as we're producing material. And once we've gotten past those hurdles, then we'll get an environmental approval for the project, and that will get us further ahead in the feasibility chain.
But is it safe to assume, Paul, that's not even really a concern? It's just more or less you've got to go through it because you've got to document it, but you're not going to have any concerns about how it's produced in the metallurgy?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, we wouldn't be going forward if during the drilling process we found a bunch of sulfur or some other contaminant in the graphite. We haven't had any of those kind of problems, so we're really happy with the results thus far. But again, you have to have the actual certification for that. You can't just eyeball it or use the drilling. You have to have a full preliminary economic assessment. And the good thing about that preliminary economic assessment, when it comes, it'll be registered, and it also will be part of it'll create a value for the project, which will go right onto our audited financials. So that'll be a big change. So I think we need to get prepared for that. What we're working on right now is getting the stock price moving a little bit so that we can put money in the till. Right, for the last little while, we've been trying to raise funds, and it's been very difficult.
And I'll ask you about that. And we got to be careful because you're not, the rules dictate you're not really allowed to, give advice on your stock price and so on and so forth. Tell people, and I don't think you're going to, but we have that caveat. But that has baffled a lot of people, which is, why the continued selling throughout the year, because it just doesn't make sense having a market cap of $2 to $3 million. It doesn't make sense for anybody to be selling, not that I can see. So what do you attribute the selling that's come in, especially since the start of the summer?
Yeah, I think what we've seen is a lot of selling related to tax loss and Quebec flow through. Potentially because there's a large discount to face value for that flow through. So we've had some difficulty there sucking up a lot of stock. And, what we've seen though is in our recent AGM, we had 42% of the shareholders vote and 99.97% in favor. So we know that we've got a good portion of it under control. About 40% is a really great number.
Sure.
So we're looking to see what we can do with the rest of it. I think that after tax loss season, we'll get back at it, and and there's nothing wrong with saying that we have to move the stock price. We can't raise money at the price we're raising it or the price it's trading at now. So we've got to get to a point where it's 5 cents or more, and that's easily something that we can focus on in January now that we've got the tax loss season out of the way. So it's a very difficult situation. Once I noticed that in the markets, once gold stopped moving way up, all of a sudden things changed, and the markets for us.
Silly, huh? And I hear you on that. But that's just silly that the market does things like that, because they have been. You might as well tell me, the price of pork bellies was dropping. As gold dropping has nothing to do but with graphite, and yet there it is. Some people try and make
it's about
commodities connections, which is silly. But hey, that's an opportunity for everyone who's looking at this to say maybe, because I can't say it. You can't, but maybe it's an opportunity that's worth looking at right now and taking very, very seriously.
Absolutely. All we can do is put the food on the table and let people take a look and see if it's edible or not. That's really what we're doing is, at any given time, we're presenting ourselves as an investment opportunity for the investor and trying to educate as much as possible. We're not here to say that, XYZ is going to happen and it's going to blow up or whatever. But the fact is that we're at a low point. We're at a 52-week low, and that's a fact. And I think that we don't want to remain there, and that's another fact. And I think that when you look at it, we want to be in this part of this secular battery materials market in which things are moving up. And the general consensus is that we've had ourselves tied as a mining play to gold to some extent, simply because the velocity of money moving through the gold and mining sector has come to us as well. But we want to change that into more of a technology play, because I think that's what we really are. We're here to be part of the new technology of electric vehicles, and leave the kind of mining sector situation behind and join that new revolution in electric vehicles. And the only way to do that is to get yourself defined as within the value chain and get partners, and getting engineering reports is going to help us do that.
And further to the point that you say, Lomiko is a technology company, you've had the successful sale of Lomiko Technologies to Prometheus Technologies. And I noticed that the closing date has been extended to June 30, 2020. Is that actually the new hard date, or are you just giving yourself some buffer there in order to make sure the deal gets done on time?
Yeah, essentially what's going on is Prometheus is listing in Europe, and we'll see once it's listed a funding go through for it, and that is the last hurdle we'll have to pass. What we had various hurdles such as Ontario Securities Commission review, BC Securities Commission review, TSX review, and shareholders vote. So we've got past all those hurdles. What we needed was to get a review done at the stock exchange in which Prometheus is listing, right. And then we will get approval to raise the funds over there, and so that will then come back. The Lomiko Technologies is being sold to Prometheus for $1.4 million. So that'll go into Lomiko's coffers and be able to be applied to any 43-101 and preliminary economic assessment. And then
I'm glad you said that. I was going to take the words out of my mouth. If the cash comes in, when it does come in, I'm assuming that's going to go a long way towards you getting the work done for La Loutre.
Yeah, and it's non-dilutive as well. So we were looking at doing a very dilutive financing to fund the PEA. And hasn't gone through at this point in time. So I think that it's best for shareholders that we don't dilute in a massive way, because we were looking at issuing 50 million shares. So yeah. I think by the time you're listening to this, we'll have some updates on that. And I think we're better to do non-dilutive financing, and I think people will appreciate that. I'm a large shareholder. I appreciate that that's the case. It's also the type of money that's going to come in that's important. We're not going to have shares issued that are going to be sold at the low we've seen here.
It's going to go right to the coffers, and that's it. It'll end there.
Right. That's right. So let's do it the right way and do what's best for shareholders. And I think that's going to be beneficial for anyone looking at the company.
Paul, thanks for joining us today. Look, congratulations on what's been a pretty successful year with drilling and so on and so forth at La Loutre, the sale of Lomiko Technologies to Prometheus, and the pending close on that. Look, the struggle always with startups and companies at the early stages, they don't have everything go right for them at the end of the day. So you guys have, I think, done well in everything that you can control, but the market itself sometimes is left to its own devices. And I like the fact that you don't want to engage in massively dilutive financing because you believe in the future of the company. And this is not the time near the end of this chapter that you want to be doing that. So hats off to you and your team. And looking forward to the dominoes starting to fall in the first and second quarter 2020, so that by the end of 2020, when we're sitting here talking, you're in a completely different situation. And I'm not talking about share price, just completely different situation as a company.
Yeah, we're all about wealth creation. We want to create a substantial amount of wealth for our shareholders. And I've been experienced in that, and I've had the experience before in which
You've done it.
That large companies do have an eye on small companies like this. Before we had a copper project that was bought out by Hudbay, and we started at 1 million market cap. That was bought out by Hudbay at 512 million market cap.
What?
So 512 million market cap. So
I heard the first time, but I just wanted you to repeat that because that's unbelievable. And that kind of track record means you guys know how to get this done.
Yeah, and again, it's about attracting people to the concept and the long-term aspects. And that copper project right now produces 2% of the GDP for Peru, and so we're very proud of that background, and we want to do that again. And right in Quebec would be the best place, and putting funds into Canadian coffers. That's what we'd like to do.
Thanks, Paul. Wishing you, your family, and the Lomiko team a very Merry Christmas, a very happy holidays, and a fantastic New Year.
Yes, happy holidays, and thanks very much for doing this.
You've been watching Paul Gill. He's CEO of Lomiko Metals, trades at the TSX Venture Exchange on the stock symbol LMR. And for our friends in the US, don't forget about you on the QB under LMR-MF. You've watched Paul, or if you've been listening by podcast, you've heard what he's had to say. Due diligence is now up to you. Start that on Agoracom by getting to the Lomiko Hub and get caught up with all this great summary information there. Watch the last couple of interviews we've done with Paul. Then link over to the Lomiko site to complete that due diligence, and hopefully you're going to like what you see. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Have a fantastic day. Have a fantastic Christmas. Happy holidays. Talk to you soon.